So have you ever felt like what's going on in your head are doing nothing but holding you down, holding you back? All your self-talk is negative. Well, that's what we're here to talk about today on today's podcast, is how to shift and create power for yourself to overcome any type of negative self-talk that's going on with you and get into the science behind how to change that from negative to positive. So let's get into this. Talking about self-talk, and this is probably one of the things that people don't realize how many words they say to themselves all day. You may feel like you talk a lot to other people, but the amount of talk that you do to yourself is an incredible number of words that you say. And what we don't realize is the power and the strength that comes from that self-talk that we have. Why we have fears and doubts, why we don't feel like we're good enough, we're not worthy, and just many other things that are looped into all of that. And what's driving it is really that self-talk that's there. Sean, I want to come to you first. Have you explain why you think this is such a relevant thing and how it's impacted you over the years?
Yeah, Brian, I love that question. It's a great question. And, we're here talking about it because we've all been through it. And that's the only way you can talk about really smartly on the topic of, self-talk, because we've been through that and have had to face that person, the man in the mirror, and what we're saying to ourselves. Um, from my experience, um, we're not given a safe space or a place in our day and our time in our routines to look at the things that we're saying to ourselves. We're so outwardly focused. We're watching the news. We're on social media. We're dealing with our families and interacting with them, that we never interact with ourselves and sit back and listen to see what we're saying to ourselves. And it's usually, for most of us, it's when we get to that place where we've hit rock bottom or come up against some wall that we say, hold on, who's driving the train? And you look down and it's like, oh, that's me. When we're talking about taking that accountability of yourself, say, oh man, well, since I'm driving, how did I drive here? Because if I'm driving a car, I would never run into a wall. um, so you figure out that, well, it's not you, it's what you've been saying to yourself subconsciously that's been directing traffic this whole time. And now you empower yourself at that point. Like the wake of the ship. If you don't like where you're headed, you turn it the other direction. And so you learn that you can empower yourself through the things that you're saying, by examining them. Number one, um, examining what you're saying to yourself, examine the things that you would like to say to yourself that tie to your outcomes, and then start, taking positive steps and integrating that into your day of how you influence yourself through those positive self-talk, and what most people refer to as affirmational at that point. But it's all the same. It's just, if you've been telling yourself that you're not to be loved, you're not to be trusted, you can't have money, um, you can't be healthy, to flipping that into a love statement of, I'm grateful for you know having love and being loved and loving myself enough to be healthy and take on my physical fitness and things like that. And it becomes just part of your daily process, and that's how we rise, and that's how we transform ourselves through self-talk. But it takes a lot of internalization, ownership, and then empowerment at the end of that. So I look forward to getting to that conversation today for sure.
So, Chris, same question for you. Why do you think this is such a relevant topic, and what's been your just overarching experience with that whole self-talk, self-doubt thing?
Well, I think positive self-talk has a huge place in uh, each individual's everyday existence, and activities and movements. First of all, let's define what positive self-talk is. I'll give you a quick one on that one. Okay, so positive self-talk is the practice of focusing on encouraging, affirming, and optimistic thoughts about oneself and one's abilities. It involves consciously replacing negative or self-defeating thoughts with positive ones.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I hear, man, I did a little bit of a deep dive last night, and I'm like, wow, this is just such an expanded topic. even to the fact that there are scientific implications, which I don't know why it blew my mind when I read that, but the reality is there are scientific implications on self-talk versus negative self-talk. Um, and I, as one who ascribed to be my best self on most days, have to do a lot of positive self-talk, especially in the arenas that I'm trying to operate in and the things that I'm trying to get done. Um, the accomplishments that I'm trying to make. It really, because of the next level of it all, it's really one of those things that I find myself doing a lot of self-talk, a lot of positive self-talk lately because of what I'm trying to boldly go some places I've never been before. And I think when you do that, so in other words, I'm getting out of my comfort zones. That's one thing, which I've been doing a lot of over this last 6 months to a year. So it requires a lot of external conversation, but also a lot of internal conversation that I have with myself. And I remember we talked about this a while back, how, at least I was talking about from my perspective, that I tended, there was a time when I always tended to shade towards the negative side of the equation, like automatically. And I've been really working hard to not do that and really lean towards the positive, even though I have no evidence that says it's going to be okay, other than I know it's going to be okay. So just trying to stay in that mindset, especially when on the surface it doesn't look like it's going well for myself or whoever the individual is, because that's what ends up happening. We had this, what I call a burp point. So you're like you're right here at this like juncture of so first is, what do I do? Can I do it? Can I be successful at it? Do I even deserve to be here? So there's a bunch of series of questions that you end up ultimately asking yourself. Now I've started to legislate out the question of, do I deserve to be here? Because that answer now has become, yes, I deserve to be here, pretty much automatic. So I really don't, I actually have kind of moved that out. But all the other stuff is, can I do it? You know, um, what's the probability of success? Things like that. Because a lot of this stuff is you're challenging yourself with new activities, new knowledge, new behaviors, and the whole 9 yards. So it would be it wouldn't be uncommon for me to have a conversation with myself on average 5 to 10 times a day, knowing, really being in touch with the fact that there could be a real positive outcome or it could be a less desirable outcome, and being okay with that.
Hmm.
That's part of the conversation as well, because it doesn't always 100% work out the way we want it to work out. That doesn't mean it doesn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
So just understanding the spectrum of what it is you are facing and what the potential outcomes can be, and being okay with that. And that, I think, is a whole nother level of positive self-talk. Understanding where this thing may end up lying, and are you okay with it if it doesn't come out on the exactly as you wished it to be.
I agree. And Chris, you hit on something I want to go back to, and I know Sean's going to definitely share some things in this space, and that's talking about the science behind it. And I think that's one piece that people don't recognize or don't realize, that there is a lot of science behind that, because what you're really talking about is your neural pathways and how those things are developed and then continually reinforced by that inner dialogue and the talking and the self-talk that you have with yourself. And the thing that's the challenge, that I think where people might sometimes not see the gap, is the action, the outcomes that come from that self-talk, right? And that's where they get stuck. So, Sean, I'll come to you with that, talking about the science of it, and I know you have some experience and some background in that. So, share a little bit about how that plays out and why it's really relevant that you just get I'm going to call it a high level understanding of the science behind how that how your mind works and how your self-talk impacts that.
Well, what you really want to know, um, I'll put it out there. I am a Gaia enthusiast, right? I love that channel. I love all the shows and all the stuff that's on there, and a lot of the neuroscience and things around neuroplasticity that are coming out, neurotransvergence and all that good stuff. I love Dr. Joe Dispenza and what he talks about when we're talking about the science behind the power of change, because we're really, I was listening to Tony Robbins this past week with one of his programs getting ready for UPW, and they're talking about pattern. Um, everything we do it because we've created a pattern, of talking, a syntax, a pattern of our day, a pattern of our life, a pattern of the way we care for each other. All those things, they're simply patterns, which means they're just neural pathways that we have created through redundancy into what we call our lives right now. But that being a pattern means they can also be changed. And every thought that we put in creates a new neural pathway in the brain that literally takes your brain from one track and moves it uh, to another track and another pathway, and you can literally gauge and measure the neuronal activity at those times when your brain is moving, when you're talking in positive um, ways and in negative ways. Um, you know, much similar to the placebo effect, what you believe will happen for you. So if you think negative things about yourself, you're going to create negative atmospheres and environments for yourself, because everything is working out from the words that are coming out of your mouth and, more importantly, out of your spirit. So with that knowledge, we start, inputting positive things that put us on a positive trajectory. Um, and I use that word because when we get into these spaces, we think things are going to happen simultaneously. Um, but because we're talking about neuroscience and neuroplasticity, and we're growing through a new syntax, that takes growth and takes time. I'm at the point now where I know that if I say something, I speak something through myself, about myself, and for myself, I know that that's not going to flip tomorrow. That's 90 days. There's some things I can measure, like, oh, I had that thought about 90 days ago, and it's here. Some things that are more deeply, 6 months, it could be a year. You don't know. Um, like Louise Hay says about the cosmic kitchen, you just put your order in and then you wait for it to come out, and don't get caught up in um, the how and the why and whether I'm worthy and those self negating ideas that Chris was referring to a little earlier. But each seed you're planting, you are literally planting that. And that's what the science is telling you. It's not just wordplay. You're literally planting seeds in your mind that grow and sprout. And you can measure this and see this under with the right technologies. So when we're talking about planting in our mental garden, that is really what we're doing. And we are literally, quite literally, watering them with our words. The words that speak out of your mouth also speak to your body as well. They've shown when you freeze water, you write on the glass, and the words that you said affected the way, I think they use it on snowflakes and ice crystals forming. It
Mm-hmm.
affected the types and the patterns and things that happen to the water. So we know that our words and our intention behind them really mean things. And yeah, so we can we can go deep into the science, but I think if we just understand that we are very much engaged and in tune with our biology and physiology, we would be much better off and use positivity and positive statements and positive attitudes, because that takes the things in the spirit world and make them real in the reality around you. And if you want
Yep.
positivity around you, you have to put it inside of you first, and then it
Yep.
will come out in
Yep.
your real world 3D reality.
Yep. Absolutely. So, Chris, before we come to you, because I know you said you did some, discovered some things from a science standpoint, I'm going to have you share that. But I want to double down on just for a moment on something that Sean brought up, and that's talking about planting seeds. Um, and I think the most important thing that I want people to realize and understand is we're not saying this is an easy process. We're not
Yep.
saying that you start today and then you succeed and you get past it. It's an ever going effort that's going to take, because all those negative type things will probably continue to happen as you work your way through life. But the reason I want to go back to talking about planting seeds, the seeds are going to get planted in your garden, whether they be negative things or positive things. That's going to continue to happen. So come into that realization first and foremost, as I think is an important part of understanding that, and to not to oversimplify it, but really what we're talking about here that's going to make the lasting change is being able to understand where the negative things are coming from that do get planted in the ground, right? Understanding that yes, they are there, and then also being able to categorize and intentionally start to put some things in the ground that are also positive. And then the choice that you have beyond that point is which ones do you water, right? And that's, I think, where your focus really needs to be, is to start to water the ones that are going to be give you the greatest fruit from the standpoint of growth for yourself and as they grow out of the ground. And that's where your efforts and your focus should be. So from a science standpoint, just understanding, yes, the negative is going to be there, as but you can also let the positive in, and then you can choose which one you want to water, fertilize, and care for, and make sure it gets the proper sunlight, right? And that's what you really want to learn and to be able to do. So, Chris, with that said, what did you learn just in your research as far as the science of this thing?
Well, I won't get into, because I'm not a scientist, for starters. Let's say that
Yeah.
real quick. I'm not a scientist, but one of the things a couple of things I learned, that our brains are these incredible muscles that have so much ability and an incredible ability to change and adapt. Um, they call that what, neuroplasticity. That's what they
Mm-hmm.
call that. Um, and basically, when we engage in the positive self-talk, we reinforce positive neural pathways, essentially rewiring our brains to focus on positive thoughts and behaviors. Um, the prefrontal cortex is responsible for planning, decision making, and regulating our behaviors. Gets a workout whenever we practice positive affirmations.
Mm-hmm.
It also gives us the ability. It strengthens its ability to focus on positive thoughts and goals. Um, it's really, for me, it's almost like the type of fuel you decide to use in your car. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you can use, regular unleaded, or you can use the high grade. Now, most of the cars today, you can function on the regular stuff, but I typically use the higher grade stuff. And you can trickle that on down to your eating habits. What you eat, what you put into your body. Um, we've talked, we were talking about diets before we got on here, and fasting, and some of the things we all do periodically, because we're getting older, and we've learned that the better we are to our bodies, the better off our bodies are to us. Well, it's the same thing with our minds. The better we are to our minds, the better off the entire organism works and functions, and gets out a lot more measurable and desired results. Um, like I said, I know we have talked about this in the past, and we'll go ahead and take it from today. Um, like I said, I used to be the guy that immediately leaned over into the negative side of the world. Now I've been conditioning my muscle in my head to always look at the positive side of. We visit the this could happen, because that's reality. But if I'm looking for desired outcomes, positive outcomes, then I need to lean into desired positive outcomes, and I need to condition my brain and talk about only that. Because what if so? Let's just say it doesn't work. Something doesn't work out. We have things we in our daily travels where you get a little less than desirable news. You get bad news. You get rejected. Things of that nature. You get a ticket on the road. I mean, any number of things can happen, and it's funny thing. I got a ticket. What was it, a month ago? first ticket I've ever had in freaking 10, 15 years, right? Now the old way, I would have been hot. I probably would have I would have went in on the cop a little bit. And of course, my new job, I got to work with law enforcement. So I had to immediately think of that. These are the people I'm trying to work with, so this is not the old days. I'm not this rebel on the road who's, trying to make a point, even though I had some points to make. The reality is I had to think about how my behavior and how I approach this is going to affect that situation and every situation moving forward over the next little bit of time. Because really, if you think about it, I could have allowed that if I'd have gone down the old road, it would have created all this negative energy and all this upheaval, and it would have been me against the world and blah, 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 blah. That wasn't the case. There was a mistake made on the road. We we have a difference of opinion about what happened, which is fine. Nothing to lose your mind over. Matter of fact, I ended up having a really great conversation with the officer. We actually laughed, which has been like, because you watch all this video, these crazy cops out here, and I'm like, I'm waiting for me to run into mine, right? And I'm like, well, we're living in Hawaii. That's the likelihood is lessened out here than it is anywhere else. But I decided to use all my positive abilities to make this situation come out, and at least I felt good about it in the end. Now, hopefully down the road, I'll report that I got because I actually wrote a letter to the courts to see if I can get the ticket dismissed. So we'll see what happens. I'm prepared, understanding that they may dismiss it, and they may come back and say, not having it, pay us the money, right? And I'll be okay with that. But the fact of the matter is, I chose a pathway to try to achieve a positive outcome from what I was looking for. So we'll see what we'll report that back at a later date. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, it was my approach. My approach was I was actually proud of myself that I had the approach that I had based on everything that's ever happened to me over the course of my lifetime when it comes to dealing with law enforcement and whatnot. Um, just change. Just really trying to make a change.
Yeah. No, that's an important piece of it. And it's interesting because what I wanted to jump on and with that, what you're saying is you use the word several times in that description of what you chose to do, the choice I had, et cetera, et cetera. So you consciously chose how to better work your way through that situation. And the same thing really applies to what we're talking about here with the self-talk. You have the power to really choose what that inner discourse is going to be with yourself, and whether it's going to be positive things, negative things, neutral things, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But that's 100% within your control, right? And so getting comfortable with that and reconciling and saying, what I want out of this, what I want for myself is these positive things, feelings, emotions, directions, whatever it might be. And then making sure that that's what you're nurturing and feeding or watering, as we just talked about. One thing I want to go to is this, I think is very important too. And this is something I've really been focused in on lately. And when I'm talking to clients that I am coaching, is we sometimes really get stuck in trying to control, and that's the word I want to use, the outcomes of certain things. Not understanding that most times we don't control the actual outcome, what's going to be the net of it. What we have control over is the inputs of it, what we initially put into it, right? That's where you should focus your time, your efforts, your energy, and get square with yourself. Because all you can just, like, say you wrote the letter, right? How that's going to play out, you don't know. You had a good dialogue with the officer. You ended up laughing. They might come and ask him. You never know. How was this person? How was the interaction? Oh, we ended up laughing at the end of the conversation. That could be the rubber stamp that they go dismissed, right? So you never know how that's going to play out. But those inputs were what you did have control over. And the fact that you chose to focus on it positively and use it in a way to hopefully move things forward long term, positively as well, could make all the difference in the world. And that's the same thing I think we need to bring to the table with our mindset about the self-talk that we have. Sean, I see your head nodding. What would you want to add on top of that?
Oh, I couldn't, I really couldn't agree more with that statement. You know, in our lead up, we were talking about, developing practical strategies here when we're talking about our self talk. And for me, those kind of practical ways to do that are, like doing, mirror work and things like that. In awareness, you know, if you don't have time to, sit with yourself, yoga for me is it's mandatory. you
Mm-hmm.
know Time to meditate, it's mandatory. It's I have to put it into my day. I don't care if that's 3 4 in the morning, 9 10 o'clock at night. It just has to be in there. Once you realize that these are the opportunities that you have to put those seeds in the ground, to input those positive statements. Are times when you're silent and you're not still,
Mm-hmm.
or when you're looking at yourself and it's just you and yourself, in the mirror. Um, because when you talk to yourself in the mirror, you're going to react to yourself as well. you know a lot of times you battle in the mirror, where you'll say something positive about yourself and yourself will tell you, no, that's not actually what we think. And it
Mm-hmm.
can be um, you know eye opening, almost visceral. I talk about it a lot of times because when you face yourself about what you think you're telling yourself. And I used to think I had great self-esteem. If anyone knew me, knows that, would assume I have really great self-esteem and love myself and this and that. But when it was time for me to tell myself in the mirror, myself said, "Yeah, no, 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 no. That's really not true." And that was a real fight for a while. Um, and to be honest, it led to a bit of a depression because you find out that you don't know yourself as much as you think you do in those moments. But those are moments of the greatest clarity. So we have to take those times and give ourselves some grace. And I think, you know, watering the seed of greatness is the hardest. It's the most difficult um, because it's the one that's gonna take the longest to grow, and to for you to tell yourself and not give up hope on the thing that you said, the idea you had, the business you wanted to start, the thing you wanted to do. Um, to let season after season go by, day after day go by, while everything else is sprouting up in your garden that you're working on, but you're not seeing that turn in your life. I think um, that's the hardest one to come by, and it will give you that resilience by saying no. It, what I'm seeing in my reality is not my reality because I've already said what my reality is going to be, and it just a matter of time before it gets there. And
Mm-hmm.
holding fast to that, through the imposter syndrome, through all the negative thoughts that are going to come up. Those weeds are going to come up to try to choke that dream out. But you've got to be that steady, patient gardener, that steady hand, and self-talk. That's that water that you're putting on there. That's that fertilizer. That's
Yeah.
that. I'm just going to be obstinate, and I'm out here um, in the garden at 6 in the morning, hoeing it
Yeah.
out,
Yeah.
right? Pulling those weeds. This is our ancestral lineage right here. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you, being out, before the sun comes up, in the garden was how we fed ourselves. So we have to
Mm-hmm.
get back to that in our own minds. Like that's why all the literature says get up in the dark before everyone else is up, even before the sun is up, because that's when all gardening is done. You
Mm-hmm.
know, is in those early hours, and we have to incorporate that into our lives, and become that gardener of yourself and of your mind, early in the morning, late in the evening, um, late at night,
Yeah.
because that's when the magic is happening, and you have to
Yeah.
be there working in those magic hours, not in traffic. That's not the best time to start doing
Yeah.
self-talk and
Yeah.
affirmations.
Yeah.
Not
Absolutely.
everybody's going to
Absolutely.
have the forethought of Chris to say, "Oh, I'm going to do something different." Um, that's because he's done the night work already, so that when it's time to be on the scene, he can do the right actions. I wouldn't say to start working on your self talk while you're in a stressful situation in afternoon rush hour Hawaii traffic. That's not going to be for the best.
Yeah. Let's talk about the affirmation. You brought that up and you mentioned that several times. And one of the things that I think, and everybody can relate to this, that knows their history, and whether you're a sports fan or not, he was such a dynamic personality. That's Muhammad Ali. You know, you talk about, I am the greatest, right? I mean, that was what he was known for. I am the greatest. That is probably one of the most powerful affirmations that's out there and has been used. And I think the point I want to bring to that, though, is some people felt like, you know, he's being brash, he's being braggadocious, and those things because he was so verbal about it, right? But the point of it is that's the exact type of self-talk you want to have with yourself, whether you put it out into the universe the way he did, and, you know, stand on the stage, I am the greatest, or you just stand in the mirror, it's just one-on-one every day, every morning, every night. I am the greatest, right? So it doesn't need to be this grand presentation on a stage. It really can be that mental work just between you and yourself. The key is to do it and to be consistent at it. So that's one of the things I definitely want to share with our audience, is just know that it's ongoing and it's something that's completely in your control. And you can have those one-on-one moments, as Sean was talking about, in the darkness, right? And that's when what that work you do in the darkness will really show up in the light, right?
Because he
Because that,
wasn't the greatest yet, right?
yeah,
He wasn't the greatest yet,
yes,
except for himself. I mean,
circumstance,
that's it.
yeah,
You know, I made a post on social media this week that um, your commitment to self care should be evident. You know, it shouldn't be. I guess he likes himself, or no. It should be upfront. It should be evident. It should be known, almost to the point where people are like, "Oh, he's kind of selfish. He likes to take care of himself." Yes, it should be to that degree. That's when you know that if no one's remarking about it, you're not quite there yet. Is what I would say, because you have to be that it's almost should be an arrogance that um, you have to, because it's a counterculture. It's a counterculture. You are. It's okay to be self-deprecating. That's just fine. You're much easier to be self-deprecating than to be, or more acceptable to be self-deprecating than self-praising, right? And that's we got we're off a tilt, right? We should be at the point where you can be a Muhammad Ali, and guess what? Everyone that believes in themselves that much, they always succeed. Um, always. I read a book of, it was like 150 characters, and that was the whole preface was about, this is 150 people that are great in what they did across all industries, but they all had that same mantra, that same motto, and it all came out very brash and braggadocious. It might not be in a ring, but in their own arenas were looked at the exact same way. How dare you believe, in yourself that much, you know, and you have to be that way for yourself. And people should be able to say that about you. Like the one thing you know about Sean's about fitness. He loves fitness, right? Anybody that knows me knows that. But what I want them to say is that, oh no, Sean's going to take care of Sean. That's much more accurate. That I would prefer. Like if anything's going to go on, oh, Sean's going to take care of Sean first. you know and
yep,
if you're that
100%.
way, that's when you know you really love yourself, and you're able to be in your greatness, because that's a great move to say. That's the move of greatness. That's why LeBron spends $1 million a year on his body, and taking care of the blessing that he has. you know it,
Absolutely. Yep.
your money goes where your priority is.
Yeah, it
Prioritize
absolutely does.
yourself.
Yep. So, Chris, I want to shift to something now we've talked about in the past, and that it fits perfectly into this, and that's talking about intentionality.
Mm.
Setting your intention as to a piece of that. So, from an intentionality standpoint, Chris, what are some of the things you've done, you've experienced that help you get focused and even just understand what the intention is and what path you want to get on to achieve those different things?
And when you say intentional, what do I want to accomplish every day? What's my long what's so there's obviously goals are at the center of this. You got
Mhm.
short term goals, you got long term goals. Um, the short-term goals are obviously things you can affect fairly quickly, don't require a ton of your time, um, and you're looking for desired outcomes. And then you got the longer term stuff that they play hand in hand, the longer term goals. But I think it's really when you say intentionality. I'm going to go back because that word's kind of stuck in my head now. When you say intentionality, that is being very definitive about what it is what you want or what you desire, or what you're seeking. So for me, like I said when we started out recording today, I said, I self-talk to myself at a minimum 5 to 10 times a day. It may even be more. There some of them are short and quick conversations with myself. Basically, just this is they're typically they'll 5-word statements. Let's go. Let's do this. This is what we're trying to accomplish. And I think I think for me, when I go to bed every night, I now have an idea of what I want to accomplish the following day. So I go to bed with that saying, okay, I got 5 things I'd like to accomplish. If I happen to get 3 of them done, 2 to 3 of them done, then it's a win-win day. We tend to stack the deck a little bit high. That's what typical folks that are consider themselves high achievers or looking to be high achievers. We're going to always stack the plate a little bit, but also being realistic about that list, saying, well, it's about priorities at that point. How are you prioritizing the list? So if you don't get to items 4 and 5, they were on the back end of the priority anyway. You prioritize by importance, right? So for me, understanding where the success point is for me, what do I consider a successful day? And sometimes it's about reassessing. So in other words, I'll go to bed with 5 ideas, right? There are 5 things that I want to do. Wake up the next day, and for whatever reason, maybe something starts off on the wrong foot, and you got to okay, maybe I need to reevaluate the priorities here. Maybe I need to dump something off the list today based on what I'm seeing out the gates. Am I giving it? Do I have a reasonable expectation to get all 5 of those things done? When you're doing a self reevaluation of the situation, and a lot of times you're like, yeah, that was me wanting to do 5 things was a little rich. Let's get real here. We're gonna take the 2 to 3, and there's the win. There's the win. So, and then sometimes it's really weird. Through the course of that day, it might turn out that you only get 1 of those things done. Mm-hmm. You got to be at peace with that sometimes, because that's I think what ends up getting a lot of people, and it's gotten me in the past. Is I'll put all this expectations out there, and then for whatever reason, some of it's out of your control. You have you just don't have control, and you end up getting only 1 done. Now the old me would I'd just be all over myself. I'd be beating myself up. I'd be just like, you're not smart enough. You're lazy. You procrastinate. I mean, just any number of things you could say about yourself that is not conducive to a positive environment or a positive mindset. And now I'm like, I have a better ability to actually see the entire landscape of it all and decide, okay, maybe it was a day where I just didn't get anything done because I wasn't in the right mindset to do it. That's okay. Because God willing, I'm going to get another day tomorrow.
Yeah.
So hopefully I'm going to get a do-over. And that's kind of the mindset I have. That's kind of my safety net there. Is like, okay, as long as God allows me to wake up the next day, I get a chance to try to do this better than tomorrow. Yeah. And that's what I did Thursday when I was having I was literally having a meltdown over a couple of things. And I made a conscious decision, even though I hated doing it. I called off school, because I just realized my mind wasn't in the space that it needed to be to go deal with my class. And I didn't want whatever was going on with me to affect more people than just me. And I think if more people were able to examine their situation and their daily on a real-time basis, examine their situation and what they're going on a particular day, and you have choices. We talked about the choices earlier. You have choices. how you proceed forward. Just don't go down it. It's a dead end road. Don't just go down there because there's a dead end road and you just happen to turn off of there, right? You turned into it and then you realize you're on a dead end road. Turn back around. Just turn back around. Head back the other direction. Rechart the map. Rechart the navigation. There's so many different ways. If you stay in the mind frame of positive outcomes, and your ability to create positive outcomes, it's going to happen. And I understand that. I really have tapped into that about me, is the fact that I have the ability to really affect change. It may not be on a grand scale, and I'm not looking forward to be. I mean, if it happens, great. I'm looking forward to getting the smaller numbers, because I think when you do smaller numbers, it ends up building up to larger numbers.
Chris, I call that doing the reps, man.
Yeah, exactly.
I call that doing the reps. I love how you talked about exactly how many times that you're noticing that you're doing those self affirmations and injecting those positive thoughts. I look at it from a very functional lens. Just like I go to the gym. Hey, I'm going to do 3 sets of 10 on this I am affirmation. I'm going to do 2 sets of 20 on this I love myself. I'm going to do an am rap of
Right.
this I am abundance, right? So, I look at that, and you have to do that across all the spectrums, of your life. Break it down into those smaller sub goals and smart goals, and say, these are the reps we're going to do, because these are the ones that are going to lead to greatness. Where they say a dream without goals is just a dream, right? I think Denzel says that. So you got to define the reps, just like you define the 5 things you want to do. I'm the same way. Stack the deck. I'm going to get these 5 things down. I break it down. I'm going to do 30 minutes on this, 30 minutes on this, 30 minutes on that, 15 on that, whatever I have to do. And you have to get those reps. Get those reps in there, and those positive affirmation reps, those positive self-talk reps are most important. And I think that's why journaling is so important. So you have it written down there. When you go to the gym, they say the same thing. Journal what you did, how many reps you did, how much weight you did, so you can plot your progress. If you start writing down how many times a day you said something positive to yourself, that's just a math problem. That's what science is. I'm going to increase. I did it twice yesterday. I'm going to aim for 3 tomorrow. I'm going to aim for, and these are the reps, and you are guaranteed success. And that, I think, is the most important thing that we're talking, that a lot of people don't get to, is that, guys, we're guaranteeing success. This is a foolproof method for a millennia, that if you do this, it's like, once I learned that, it's like, oh, cheat code.
If I may interrupt, I've been having my own challenges with a new job, still trying to get comfortable in a teaching environment, and what I've had to keep reminding myself is I'm on a new. My job's been 4 months. I think I've been doing this job, and I don't think I know I haven't got the success that I desire yet. And that's usually the part for certain people where it starts to break them down a little bit. And, because you start to look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, what am I not doing right? And then, like, for my situation, I have to keep reminding myself, I'm really embarking on a job that I've done some components of it, but it's not something I've done a ton of. So there's no true muscle memory across the board on this thing. So I'm creating it. Along the way, though, I'm fighting off I'm not worthy. I'm not smart enough. I don't know enough about it. Well, that's the reality. I need to know more. I need to learn more. That's a reality. And every once, you go back and forth a little bit, right? And you're like, and I'm like, no. It's okay. So these are the times when I go and speak with the people I work with, or even if I decide to come and talk to you, Brian, I talk to, like, my director. We have conversation about it, and I'm like, hey, I just learned this over this last week of trying this 3 different ways. I finally figured out a way that I'm comfortable, trying to achieve this goal. And I'm building my confidence through that. But I can only imagine if I didn't do positive self-talk, how much of it's still an up, I'm still swimming upstream. But can you imagine how much more difficult it would be if I didn't have these tools in my toolbox? That every time I encounter a little bit of rough water or a little bit of less than optimal weather, that if I didn't have this other knowledge base or these other tools to lean back on, like, one of the things for me is it typically always works out. It just does. If you look at most people, if they looked at the history of their lives, they would see that they went through a lot of turmoil. We all go through turmoil. Sometimes it meets you every day. Sometimes it sees you once a week. Sometimes it sees you once a month. Sometimes it visits you once yearly. It just depends. But the fact of the matter is, when I allow myself to be who I really am and not allow any of those outside forces to creep in, I know that I typically, I'm like a cat. I always land on my feet.
Yeah.
But I put myself in those positions to land on my feet. That's the other part of it that we don't all the time examine.
Yeah.
This is muscle memory.
Yeah.
This is repetition. This is you are what you eat.
Yes.
I know what I want, and I know some of the steps. I may not have them all down 100%, but I know the steps.
Yeah.
I know,
Brian,
I know how much I can affect me, and then the people that are around me.
Yeah, Brian,
Yeah, go ahead.
I know you want to move on, but Chris hit on something I just have to hit on really
Go
quickly.
for it. No, go
I
for
have
it.
to hit this really quickly because Chris did something very important here that the viewers need to understand. He used the word real and reality several different times in that statement, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And he used them in very different ways, which are very important and should be teased out. So he said, in reality, he didn't know something or isn't in the place that he wants to be, right? And a lot of us face that in our 3D reality. I'm not the this and I'm not the that, and I don't feel qualified, and I'm not there, right? But he also used the word real in another way, where he got to the super reality, right? Back to the truth, because the truth of the matter is he knows everything he needs to know when he needs to know it. That's real. That's the reality. What you're seeing and calling reality right now, like, oh man, I think they want me to know something about this on a different level of something or not that I don't feel prepared for. But that's not that's just a reality. And that's why they say reality isn't real, because what's real is that whatever Chris needs to know, which he just alluded to at the end of the statement, whatever I need to know, I know it when I need to know it. That's the real statement, because that's why he's always on top and always landing on his feet, because that is the reality,
That
not the
is.
part that of he doesn't know what he needs to know at the second right now. The real part is that when he needs to know it, he's going to know it, because he's the guy that always lands on his feet and he has the track record that says that. So we have
Mhm.
to understand what's real versus what's reality. Reality is
Mm.
the 3D world that you see right in front of you. This is just the situation, but you're the cause and the cure. So you don't know it right now, but that means you have the answer already. You have it inside. It just has to come forth. You might have to read a book, you might have to talk to someone, you might have to, but that those are the inputs.
Yeah. Those are the inputs.
Because at the end of
Absolutely.
the day, the outcome is going to be I knew what I needed to know,
Yeah.
when I needed to know it, and how I needed to know it.
Yep.
And not only did it come forth like that, but it came out in an amazing way, in only the way that me, Chris, could do it.
Correct. Yep.
That's the empowerment part there, and that's where you're bringing your positive thoughts and affirmations full circle, and you're actually using them, and you're leaning on them, and they just come to fruition for you when you lean on them.
Yeah.
Always lean.
To follow up on that, Sean, it's funny because you're absolutely right. That's the reality versus what's real, all right? And that's also something that I talk about when we talk about being present or staying in the present, because that's the other piece of it that I think we do to ourselves. is we start to play out how things are going to happen versus trying to just control what we control, which is the moment right now. That's
Mhm.
what you have the power to manifest things over and to make changes, make different choices, etc. All that happens real time, right?
Real time.
Versus what you, if I do this now, and then that's going to cause this, it's going to cause that. Yeah, in theory, it could possibly play out that way, but maybe not. So don't get caught up in what the quote unquote desired result is actually going to end up being, because it'll be what it is when you get there. Does that
Yeah.
kind of make sense? That's the reality of it, right? But that's hard to get our minds around because we want to feel like, as human beings, that I absolutely control 100% of my destiny. There's so many factors that play into that. But what you do control is that input, as we talked about, that you're doing right now,
Hmm.
whether it's outbound input to what's happening out in the world, whether it's inbound input to what you're talking to yourself about. All of that matters real time in the moment that you're
Hmm.
in.
That's right.
I want to transition to one thing that I definitely want to get to, and I think this is a critical piece about the overarching talk about self-talk and mindset and just in general, and that is um, we always hear talk about comfort zone and things like that, but not so much that we always want, or not, and I'm generalizing to the easy button. We're looking for the easy button. What's my shortcut to get this done or to achieve this or to accomplish that? And that's the one thing I definitely want to bring to the table, to redo these neural pathways and to get yourself moving in the right direction. There's not a shortcut to do it. The work is the work. Being committed to that work is what really matters. And how I want to tie that back to is this. We were talking earlier about goals and goal setting and long term and short term, or even if it's just a to do list for today, right? I got these 7 things I want to get done. What people tend to do, and I'm going to phrase this too kind of as a question to you guys because I want to hear your thoughts. What we tend to do is we've got this list of 7 things that we want to get done for today, to whether it's leading us towards a short term goal or long term goal, whatever it might be. And when we start to work on these things, we tend to always do the ones that are the easiest to get done first, with the mindset or thought that that's going to create momentum for me. So when I get to the big ones, then I'm already moving forward. So that is my question. Do you think that actually does work by taking the easy ones? Or do you think it would be better to look at the list, say, that's the hardest thing on this list, and go at that first versus the easy ones first? What are your thoughts on that? Sean, I'll have you answer first.
Man, this funny. It's funny. This was a conversation I had with myself 2 nights ago. Um, busy family at home, and you know, kids are gonna wreck the house. Yeah, it's just gonna be. And I'm kind of ADD, so I'm always constantly picking up behind or whatever. But we got to end of that night. Kitchen was a mess. So, and I'm looking around. The whole house is a mess. So, I was faced with this quandary. I have a sink full of dishes, things on the counter. I have things on the floor. I have things on the chair. To make it simple. And so, in most people's opinion, the hottest item on that list is going to be those dishes in the sink, right? But it's also what people have the most of an aversion to is doing the dishes. And so, um, so I did the self talk thing, and I'm just going to say I didn't win this one. I picked up the living room because fixing the pillows on the chairs pretty easy. You just fluff them up, put it back there. Ah, that feels like it's done, right? Oh, there's only one thing on the floor. Pick that up. Now the living room is starting to come together. And so you follow that pattern, right? You pick up the little thing, little thing, little thing, little thing. And what you've done is done a whole lot of little things. When you turn around, the big thing is still there. And you know what happens? The big thing was there the next day because I chose to do the little things first. And I was too tired. By the end of that, it was like, well, those dishes are going to wait till tomorrow. Now, what would have happened if I'd done the dishes first is I'd have done the dishes first and the big thing would have been done. And then my natural momentum from the big thing would have carried me to pick up those last little few things out of the way, because, oh, those are just last little few minute things. That's how that plays out in real life. Um, and just to make it a really real world scenario, that's what that looks like. And that's why it's so important to do the hard thing first. And so that's why, when I stop and think about it, I make sure I do the hard thing first. That's why they say go to the gym first in the morning. Go do all that stuff. Do the first thing first, because then your momentum truly will carry you through those smaller, easier items, and there's just easier lifts, and our minds can handle it better. But if we get caught in doing the easy thing first, it's a truism in life. If you caught up in doing the easy things first, you're never going to get to the big thing, because the easiest things are always the easiest things.
Chris, what are your thoughts on that?
You kind of lost me. I was sitting there just kind of daydreaming about the dishes. So,
It was a mountain of dishes, man. I'm telling you.
because I would have tackled the dishes first. I'm gonna be honest with you. That's just
Yeah.
the way I'm wired. My mother
Yeah.
instilled that in my brain. I can't actually, Sean. I can't relax at home with if there's dishes in the sink. I
I'm
just
with
can't do
you.
it. I
I'm
just
with you.
can't do it. So it's an automatic thing, and I think that's conditioning and upbringing. So once I'm done eating, I don't want to relive what I ate in a dirty plate for the foreseeable future. So I'm looking to knock that out the box real fast in a hurry
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
get it over with. Um, but I think at the end of the day, um, we talked about the list and some of this stuff you can do quick, and I don't think there's a right or a wrong way to do this. I just think it's your way, so you have to decide what works for you and what serve. We talk about what serves you, and if doing all the little things before and the dishes are later, that serves you, great. Somebody like me is we're gonna walk in the same room, and I'm gonna do the exact opposite. I'm hitting the dishes first, and then probably the momentum of that will get me through to the other stuff, because I have that ability. I'll just keep going until I'm probably exhausted at the end of it. But the whole point is, when I finally sit down, it's like it's clean. What they say, cleanliness is next to godliness,
Next to godliness.
right? So, but that's, like I said, that was a very big importance in my home, that the dishes were done and the house was, everything was picked up and put away, or as my mother used to say, uh, everything has a place and a place has everything.
Yep. It's very true. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on that. And I think the takeaway from that is there is not necessarily a right or a wrong way to do it. The key is to understand for you what is your way of getting it done, and then sticking to that, and being committed to that. I look at it from the standpoint of this, because I was that guilty person who says do the easy things first, and it's going to give you some momentum. But then I really started to process that through, and it really comes down to thinking of it from one of two very simple perspectives, and you can kind of use this to determine what works better for you. Would you prefer to work uphill or downhill? Because that's really what you're doing. If you're starting with the small things, you're starting down at the bottom of the hill and you're working your way up the hill to get to the big thing that's at the top.
Yeah.
Or you can just tackle the big thing that's at the top and then the smaller things. And so you're actually working down the hill. Um, and what I've been trying to get myself to do, just like everybody else out there in the world, we're works in progress, right? Um, I'm shifting my focus and my mindset, and my processes and quote unquote intentionalities as well, to start. Let's just hit the big things and then let that then guide me down the hill versus trying to climb up the hill, and see how that works and plays out for me. So that's been my focus, and that's what I've been working on for myself. So that's kind of why I wanted to bring that in and get that on the table and get your perspectives of it. Again, not a right or wrong way, but just understanding how you process, what drives you, and then the most important piece of it, though, is to stay committed to getting it done. It doesn't matter whether you start with the dishes or finish with the dishes. The objective is what? To get it all done, right? That's what you want to accomplish. So do it. Do it works best for you. That said, I want to kind of bring this around to the final thoughts piece of this, and just have each one of you share what you want our audience to take away from this today and from our conversation, and maybe some things you want to just reiterate that maybe we've touched on. So, Chris, I'll come to you first, and Sean, I'll have you wrap it up for us. Final thoughts, Chris.
I thought about this last night when I was sitting in front of my computer and really kind of diving deep into this, and come to the conclusion that positive self-talk is a huge and powerful tool that I use, an invaluable tool that I use on a day in and day out basis. It is what drives my car. Like I said, I'm really in this another period of growth,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been working on setting my goals higher and higher. You know, we talk about the audacious goals. I've been working on setting audacious goals. And so I got this tape that just keeps playing in my head that I'm trying to use. No, I shouldn't say trying to. I'm using to propel me into my dreams and my desires and my wants and wishes. And at all costs, I'm trying to stay. At all costs, I'm staying locked into this mindset, even on the days when it feels like it's going to kill me. Because there are days when it's just not working out. It does not feel good, but I hold on. I hold on to what I need to hold on to. I remind myself, whether it's a conversation I have one-on-one with me, or whether I have a conversation one-on-one with someone else, an outside person, because I now have a number of folks that I can call on for different things. My family's been more even through death. My family's been a little more instrumental in my life, and just I was just amazed last week that the space that we've come into as a family, because my family's getting smaller, but the family I got they're just great human beings. But I keep the other thought I keep having is, why shouldn't I win? Why shouldn't I have the successes that I desire? Why shouldn't my dreams be allowed to come to fruition? You know, there's been a lot of change on the horizon recently, through different situations. Your situation, Brian, has been a big catalyst in how I'm looking at my world and my life, and what I want my legacy to be. And I've really kind of gotten a lot more honest with myself over these last, especially since the year ended and the year started, about what I want. And I know you know this, Brian. I've been keeping some things close to the vest lately. I know you've noticed that, because I figured it. This is what I figured. When I need the voices, when I need the advice, then I'm going to come and seek it out, because in a lot of cases, you're a part of my support system. Sean, you're a part of my support system. There are two or three or four or five other people that are part of my support system. I know typically what you're going to offer me as advice, as support. Um, I know this. Some of these one or two, because it's just one or two things that I've come to the determination that I've got to go alone on them myself. I'm really the only one that can be the difference maker in these situations, because I'm the only one that knows truly what it is that I really, really want, and more importantly, why I want it. That's a big thing. You guys talk about the why all the time. Why do I want this? Sometimes I look at myself, because a couple things I'm like, what are you doing? And then it's nothing bad. I mean, it's not, it's just intangible stuff. It's stuff that feeds my soul. It's love. It's just the feeling of belonging, the feeling of being desired. These are the things that matter to me today. But guess what? I have to put the work in. There's no quick fix. There's no magic wands that you guys can wave that are going to believe me, because if you could do it, you would. I know that about you guys, that you guys want for me to be happy, and just as I want for you to be happy. But there's only certain things I can expect out of you as far as how you help me achieve that outcome. I already know that, just like you said earlier, Sean, I already know I'll know what I need to know when I need to know it. You'll be there for me when I need you to be there for me.
That's right.
Right now, I'm in this period of introspectiveness where I need to explore it, understand it, hammer those foundational points down, and keep it moving in the direction that I desire it to be moving into.
100%, Chris. You're absolutely right with
And
that.
I will close with this. I truly believe I'm on these couple of fronts that I've got, and I don't have any evidence per se, but it's just a feeling that I'm going to come out on top on these, that I'm going to get my way. And, and that's not, I know that might sound a little bad, but I'm really sitting here reinforcing those thoughts with the idea that I am deserving. And that's a tough one, I think, for some people to say, I'm deserving of certain things, because it has a little air of arrogance to it. It has a little air of confidence to it. And a little air of surety. And I think in a world where there's so much, if it leans the other direction, it's good to have those three things in your pocket
Agreed.
as you try to traverse through your life.
Sean, what are your final thoughts?
Man, I've got a lot of thoughts on the topic. I never have enough, but in efforts to wrap it up a little bit and tie things up in a functional bowl, what I want the audience to really understand, Brian, Chris, is that everything we're talking about with self-talk, anything we're talking about neuroplasticity and things of that nature, um, these are all actions based.
Mm-hmm.
Everything we're talking about is action based, and so you have to define, an audience needs to define what their actions are going to be, in a real way. Just like Chris was saying, how many times a day am I going to take the time for myself, because only I can do for me. No one else is going to do this for me. Um, I have to define first who I am. Find who you are. Um, find what you're saying to yourself. That's what the mirror work is. Find out what I'm saying to myself. Number three, after that, is redefine what you're saying to yourself if you don't like it, which most of us found out that we didn't like what we were saying to ourselves, which had us in a really negative space. So change what you're saying to yourself, and then to that. Commit to that cycle. Commit to doing those reps each day. Commit to yourself each day. Set your intention for yourself each day. Because if you set your intention for yourself to serve yourself and honor yourself, your job and in your family and everybody else is going to get the best of you, because you've already decided to give your best to yourself, and you're the best tool that you have in your toolbox. So commit to that and cultivate that. Literally put in your mind that each time I'm talking, sometimes I'll just sit here and envision a garden and literally watering with my affirmations. I'll walk through that for a period of time where I can visualize that, and then evolve. The evolution, it happens. That's that part where you know what you need to know when you need to know it. And you have to be aware. And if you're paying attention, you'll see yourself making those quantum leaps. Like Chris said, man, normally I would have given this police officer a piece of my mind, but oh, I just did a little quantum leap right there and chose a different route. And that's my evolution right there. These are all active. Navigating those pieces is really important, because that's where you're building resilience when the things aren't happening the way you thought they were. Hey, I've been doing these affirmations, I'm still running into certain things. Build the resilience at that point to one, say, hey, yeah, you probably didn't need to eat that donut yesterday. It's okay, but give yourself some grace. Put your wall back up and say, okay, well, it won't happen again. That's what Kobe talks about all the time. Yeah, I lose a game, but then it gave me fuel. I now know what I want to change. Next time it's time to do the dishes, guess what's getting done first, guys? The dishes are getting done first. Okay? But that's what you have to do. And I don't have to beat myself up, say, man, last time it didn't happen. No, you build that resilience as you navigate you're living your best life. You're creating your best self. That imposter syndrome is going to show because your reality is not going to affect what's real for you. It's like the difference between that show is called Grown-ish, right? It's like I'm not really grown, I'm grown-ish. Reality is just like real-ish. We can affect all those things that we see around us, but we've been taught that it's a hardwired system. But these inputs that we put in every day really drive the train. And then you know allow yourself to transform. Allow yourself to transform and be okay with you being the lone wolf. As Chris was saying, sometimes it's alone. You're alone in that sometimes. It's a single clap in the room first for a long time until you get a whole audience clapping for you. So you have to be the Ali to say I'm the greatest, even while you're first stepping in the Golden Gloves ring, because one day you're gonna be world champion. So lace it up, do the reps, love yourself, learn yourself, be your best self. Those are the best steps I've got, Brian. This is a great conversation, man.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sean. So I want to share my final thoughts here. A little bit of a story. I just came back off of a business trip. I was traveling with a coworker, and we've known each other for a while. But it's always different when you have a professional quote unquote relationship, and when you spend this much time with someone over 6 or 7 days. A lot more of the intimate, more personal things kind of come to the surface in some of the conversations. So I'm bringing this up because it really got me back in touch with what I'm going to call my personal power, right? And sometimes that's one of the things I think you really need to reach back to and touch on when you talk about the self-talk that you have, because we all have these personal powers or superpowers within us, but somehow, some way, we either bury them or we get distracted, and we lock them away in a closet or something. We don't use them as we should. Uh, I was sharing with him just kind of some of my history in prior life and career wise and some different things, and it brought back to mind some of the interactions that I had with either previous managers or previous coworkers and those type things. And I remember very specifically in one instance, I was in a specific position. I had only been in that position for 6 months, so it was already a new promotion for me, and a new opportunity within the company came to me. I didn't go seek it. Someone said, "Hey, you should throw your hat in the ring for this job." And it was a sizable promotion and a whole different level of responsibility, similar to what Chris has been going through. And my immediate reaction was, I don't qualify. I've never done anything in that realm in my life. Uh, and her response to my immediate response was to say, well, look at it from this standpoint. Even if you just go through the interviewing process that you have to go through and who you will be talking to and interviewing with the director and these type of people, uh, that experience itself will give you more strength, more power, more understanding about you, yourself, the business world, etc. And I went, you know what? You're right. That will, just the experience of it all. Um, so I threw my hat in the ring, and literally this whole process took like 2 weeks. And it's like, here's your job offer. And it was like, what? Right? So sometimes we have to just get out of our own way. And part of that process is to be open, to be honest, as you talked about, Sean, the reality versus being real, and just allowing it to happen, right? That's the personal power of it. That's the power of being engaged and being open and accepting to what could be your next gift, your next blessing. But if you're closed, it's never going to happen. So be open and take those risks, take those chances, and allow yourself, because there is no reward without change and growth. That's where it all happens. And so you have to allow yourself to have those things, and that's part of that self-talk, to say I am worthy, I do deserve. Why not me? All those things we just talked about.
Two things I thought of when you just did your little dissertation. There's two things that we should definitely make a part of what you just said was the risk and the vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
That is something that I've really been working on, which is really my Achilles. Is
Mm-hmm.
for somewhere along the line, we talked about this in the past. I went from somebody who was, fair, what I call a medium level risk taker, to somebody who became just wildly risk averse. I just and now I'm leaning back into these things, realizing that not being vulnerable, not being willing to be vulnerable, and not being willing to take some risks is not going to help me it's not going to help me achieve my goals. I stand no chance unless I can come off. Believe me, I can't wait to tell this story in the coming months when whatever the outcomes are, and we'll explore that. Trust me, I will be the guinea pig in this one. I have no problem with it plus I want to share it with our audience what I had to go through to get to where I've got to, whether it's positive or whether it wasn't a completely desired outcome. I'm still going to win. At the end of the day, I'm still going to win. I know that about it. This exercise is necessary, and I think that's what I'm trying to say with our audience. There are certain things that that are necessary in your journey that are not going to feel comfortable. They're not going to feel good. They're going to make you question everything you're about. But you are where you are supposed to be. You are on the road you're supposed to be on. Take, buy the cup of coffee, take the ride, do what you need to do, expose yourself, and just give yourself a freaking chance. That's really what it's about. Give yourself a freaking chance. This is the crazy part. I tell this to my students all the time. Well, damn it, if I'm going to be giving them that kind of advice, then I damn sure better be ready to take it myself. I got 18, 19, and 20-year-olds that are hanging on my every freaking word now. I mean, I'm at that point in this part of the journey. And that is not lost on me what my responsibility is. To live an authentic life, to practice what I'm preaching with them, and then being able to report it back to them. So
Absolutely.
Anyway, I didn't need to come on so strong at the end.
No.
It just the power took over and it hit me, and I was like, I gotta let it rip, man. I don't, you know what I mean?
That's what matters is the passion and getting in touch with that inner self, man, and letting that out, and that's the vulnerability piece, as you just talked about. So that's awesome.
The more I'm honest about this, the greater the gifts are. The greater the gifts are that I get to give, and the greater the gifts that I get to receive.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
And I'm blessed to be in you fellas' company. Thank you very much.
Amen.
Yes. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time today. I know our audience got some golden nuggets out of what we talked about today. And again, the most important piece of it is to be open, to be honest, and to push yourself forward without risks, without taking some vulnerable things or putting yourself in some places that may seem a little bit uncomfortable. That's where the growth will come from. But that's the honest self-talk that you need to have with yourself to continue to push yourself forward. Build that muscle, make yourself stronger. And yeah, as Chris said, you will win when you do that. And Sean mentioned earlier, this is a guarantee. That's the craziest part about it. What we're talking about is a guaranteed positive result. But to get there, to achieve it, there's the work, there's a commitment associated with it. And that's what we want for each and every one of you out there, is to stay committed and to succeed. That said, thank you again. Take care, be safe. And as I always say, everyone out there, let's take care of each other.